let's start with Ukraine. Whenever I talk to my fellow Lithuanians, I tell them, like, when I talk to Americans, most of them do not support the war in Ukraine, and especially they do not support Ukraine itself.
Right.
And they can't believe me. They don't believe me. Like, there's no chance. Like, the U.S. has sent in 2 years more than $100 billion to the Ukraine, so they must have supported the Ukraine and the Ukrainian war. They want the Ukraine to win this war. What are your thoughts on Ukraine?
Well, it's a money laundering scheme. So, I mean, there's problems in it just at the outset in that, so we've meddled in the politics over there like we've meddled in everything, okay? The Ukraine is actually the seat of globalist power and influence over there. You look at the pharmaceutical companies that are there. You look at all of the World Economic Forum influence. You look at all of the things that are going on in there. We installed Zelensky. We did a coup there to get out the prior government. So we've been heavily influenced there. So has globalist powers, the oligarchs, all the stuff that we talked about in the previous episode. That's an epicenter for it. It's very easy when you're sending billions over to a country like that to be siphoning billions into the pockets of politicians and global powers and the oligarchs and the war military industrial complex, all of that. Putin can be a bad guy, and we can not like Putin, but we can also understand that this has been a wicked setup from the beginning. So we had agreed that we would not continue to move NATO further and further east. We violated that.
It was 1990s, then to early 2000s when Putin arrived.
Yeah, we continued to do that, and it's more complex because you have Russians in the Ukraine. You have Russian-speaking people in the Ukraine. It's a mixed bag of folks, right? Is Putin a good guy? No, and you don't have to think he's a good guy, but you know what he is? He wants a sovereign Russia. So he wants sovereignty for that area. So in one sense, he's fighting the same battle that anybody who opposes globalism is fighting, right? And you can just objectively view that and understand that that's the case and still think that he's not a great person. You can still call him a thug and a dictator and all the things that he is that are objectively true.
Yeah.
But you can recognize that we have created the war and the conditions, and it's unwinnable. That's the interesting thing. They're losing, right? Russia has always been able to just throw bodies at these problems, and then over time they end up winning. Now, where I feel bad is for the Russian people, the innocent Russian people, and the innocent Ukrainian people that are ground to dust in the process, right? They're being ground to dust in the gears of something like this, while the globalists get wealthy, while you have these sort of things going on, while our politicians, the reason that they keep voting for these things is that money comes back to them, a lot of it. It comes back to them in regards to, contributions, and they get to invest in things that make them wealthy. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening. It's corrupt all the way around.
Just today I've seen this meme. So Biden and the whiteboard, and he says, I send your tax dollars to the Ukraine. Ukraine sends it to Hunter. Hunter gives it to me. That's the whole scheme.
Yeah.
And there's not even a conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's been proven. Yeah. Now it's because he was on the board and he had such great contributions to Hunter. Yeah. No, which is all laughable.
Amazing human being.
Yeah. No, he's not a business contributor in any meaningful way. He doesn't have the skills. Yeah. That's right. Now he's an artist, which is another money laundering scheme. It's brilliant, by the way. But if you want to give, donations to, them, buy some of Hunter's art. Brilliant. They're very smart at their deviousness.
Are they? They get exposed all the time.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because they own all the levers of power, so they can do things that like it's that I forget how it goes, but it's They know they're lying. We know they're lying. They know we know that they're lying, right? It's that, but they just go, hey, yeah, okay, so sue us, right?
Yeah. What are you going to do?
They own the courts, right? That they own the levers of power. They own all the institutions, right? They own our churches. I mean, that's the sad thing that I deal with every day, is the majority of our churches in this country are compromised. You have some very famous pastors that held the line for many decades, where they were given all kinds of money by a George Soros group, and they started watering down their messages. I mean, guys like Tim Keller in New York, who now he's dead, but he was given by, I think it was I might screw up the name, but the Gospel Coalition or one of those. But and again, I could be wrong. If that's the wrong one, I apologize. But there is these organizations that were set up to have them do a softer message, to have them not speak out harshly against socialism and things like that. Jesus was a socialist after all, which is of course a total lie, right? But they want to have these pastors saying these things. There's this whole movement to embrace homosexuality and deviant sexual lifestyles within the church. The widening of God's grace. God loves us all. Of course, He loves us all, but there's still sin, and there's still things that we are to reject and not welcome into our churches as if there's nothing wrong with it. We are to welcome people in, and we're to minister them, and we're to get them to go forth and sin no more. And all of us have sin. All of us are. Sure. Dealing with issues and challenges in our life and all that stuff, but we're not openly saying, "Hey, it's no big deal." If you're doing that, you've lost, right? You've been swallowed up by Satan.
Let's get back to Ukraine. But why Ukraine? Why this specific country? Because it has ties to Russia. Because they don't have any control over Russia. They want to overthrow Russia, which is impossible, I want to say.
Why specifically Ukraine? I mean, Ukraine is the breadbasket of that area. So Ukraine is got very many important resources, right? And so you control the food, right? You control the crops, agriculture, things like that. That's very strategic. Okay. Also geographically, where it's located. There's a reason that it's like on the front, moving NATO, right? Because many of those countries in that area, none of them were part of NATO, and then just over time, it's the dotting of the map, right? And so I think for that reason, and then again, the CIA, who's been involved, who created the coup there. I mean,
2013.
We have on tape. I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but one of our diplomats who's CIA.
Victoria.
Yes. Gosh, what's her last name? Anyway, the audience probably knows who we're talking about. But no, they're caught on camera saying, okay, if Zelensky gets bumped off, who are we going to install next? I mean, that is what we're dealing with. Our country, which I think inappropriately became the police of the world, are the ones that are, controlling all the power players in the world. And, once you're messing with sovereign nations, and once you're pulling out democratically elected leaders, and replacing them with someone else, then you're not ensuring democracy around the planet. You're interfering in it. You're manipulating things, and it turns into evil.
But people turn blind eye to the one fact that Ukraine is a super corrupt country. So,
it always has been.
Yeah, so how do I know that? My mom is Ukrainian. I've been to Ukraine like 5 times. I've spent there a lot of time there, months and months there during my childhood. So in 2013, the coup has been done in Ukraine, and the legitimate president that was there, Yanukovych, has flee the country at that time. But what they found is that he was some kind of an oligarch as well. He was so corrupt. He had those toilets made of gold. There are even photos. So his house looked like a pharaoh's house.
Right.
So he was corrupt as hell. But at the same time, during the coup, Poroshenko was installed, a corrupt politician as well. Right now, Zelensky, right? Yeah. I don't know whether he acknowledges it, whether he realizes that or not, but he's a dead man. It's only a matter of time when they're going to get rid of him.
Yeah, at some point they're going to have to.
That's for sure. No chance.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. So the Bondarenkos, I'm not sure if you're familiar with their story, but they live not far from here, which we should get one of them on your podcast. But the senior Bondarenko, he was in prison for preaching the gospel of Jesus in Russia, got thrown in prison. I think he spent a total of 23 years in prison, much of it in isolation. I mean, he's got a wonderful story of standing bravely in that. And so they live here, successful family, again, just a hour and a half north of here or more. Have come to our church. They're amazing folks. They talk quite detailed about all of the corruption in Ukraine, because they're Ukrainian and they're back and forth, and they've been back and forth during this time.
They're Ukrainians, but they were sentenced in prison in Russia.
Yes. Their father was, and he was telling me amazing stories of what's happening right now in the war, including the Ukrainian forces bombing some of their own buildings for their own purposes too.
Oh man, you can't say that.
Yeah,
you're gonna get eaten alive for that.
Yeah. Well, I probably will, but that's not coming from me.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's wild with some of the stuff that they're doing.
So we have a few friends that we met back in Spain, where the war started in 2022. We lived in Spain at that time. So there was a family that flee this tragic city, Mariupol. The Russians destroyed the city, so she went here with her 2 or 3 kids at the moment. So she was telling us the story, and now we have a few acquaintances, a few friends here in LA that are from Ukraine. So they're all telling the same story. So they pay up to $5,000 to $6,000 for them for males to get out of Ukraine. Yeah, because they're not allowed to.
Yeah, because I mean they're recruiting. You've probably seen some of the videos of them. I mean they're putting men with Down syndrome in, to fight. I mean they're pulling everybody in because they're running out of able-bodied fighters. Based on the deaths, but also based on the fact that many of them are fleeing who can flee.
And you know what's crazy? So if you support your own country and you think that you do the good stuff, why do you flee? Yeah. Russians didn't flee, or French or Brits during the World War II, right?
Right.
But this war, Ukrainians flee. Russians flee as well. Yeah. They go all the way to Kazakhstan, all those other countries, just not to go to the military, not to go to the war and to die. That's why it's a perfect example of how ridiculous this war is.
Yeah. No, I've got a friend who was a jiu-jitsu student of mine that came, hardly spoke any English, and that's why he was here. From Russia, he fled. Yeah, and because he didn't want to fight. Yeah, no, I mean it's all terrible. I mean, war is terrible. War is necessary. Unfortunately, it's a part of the unfortunate human experience, and even in biblical times, even in times when you don't want to, there's times to fight, and there is time to wage war. Even Ecclesiastes says that, the great Solomon. But it's still terrible.
You know what's terrible? What terrible is if you're a regular Ukrainian, you live in your country, you love your country, you don't love your government maybe, right? But you love your country, you love the people that surround you, right?
And that's who your country is. Yes, it's your friends, your family, your neighbors.
And your government decides that from now on we're going to stick with NATO, with the US, with the Western Europe, right? So, and on the other side, the Russians, Putin declares a war, and you are just like a pawn. Yeah, you're just being drawn to the war. You die there, and that's it.
Yeah, that's when you realize the way the world works is when they are doing things and you have no say.
But at the same time, Ukrainians had all the options. They had the possibilities to kind of play with NATO, to play with the US. Why not? They're a sovereign country.
Had Donald Trump been president at that time?
No.
There would be no war.
What do you think would happen? Putin wouldn't do that at all?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there would have been negotiating options. I mean, Trump came out and said, I'd have this thing over in 24 hours, and he probably would. So, Now, there's several reasons. Okay, some of the reasons that like Trump or the super pro Trump people would be, it's like, yeah, it's because he's a great negotiator, and they're afraid of what he'd do, and wielding power here and all that sort of stuff. And while that's not untrue, it's more complicated than that. This was sanctioned by this current administration. The Biden administration wants this stuff. The Biden administration is part of all the corruption. The Biden administration is part of getting their pockets filled by the war military industrial complex people and the other oligarchs and all that sort of stuff. So of course it's going to happen under his watch because it's in his interest. It's in their interests to send $100 billion over there. It's in the interests of the establishment to do that. It wasn't in Trump's interest to do that. He doesn't want that. That's why we had no wars during that time. That's why they didn't like him too, because the wars, feed a lot of hungry mouths in business.
I think a lot of foreigners that are watching right now, they have no idea what's going to happen after the war ends. So the BlackRock has already signed a document in the country that they're going to rebuild the country.
Oh yeah. No, again, I mean, this is, war creates wealth. Not for the poor people, right? Not for the people that get killed in their houses and everything gets bombed and devastated. But again, going back to my common theme, we are fighting a war. It's sovereignty, it's sovereign nations against a globalist cabal. All of this stuff has been marching in that direction since, again. It's since the beginning of time. Okay, this is the kind of ill progress march of mankind, right? This is the wickedness that and sinfulness that we're tending toward. This is Tower of Babel. We need to all come together under central authorities. So that's always something that we fought against and will always fight against. It's something that America, because of its shaping and founding, kind of held off and staved off for a very long time. It's why the world was more free because of America.
So what do you think happens if Trump gets elected? He gets inaugurated, I want to say January something.
Yeah.
He does a few calls, and what? The territory is going to... Part of the territory is going to be handed to Russia?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there is, again, this is a time like never before. So I think that Trump, either way, Trump gets defeated or Trump wins, we are heading towards violence. And I really do believe that. I don't see how that's not the case. Peter Turchin, and I talk about this in my talks all the time because it was so profound, but Peter Turchin, he's a Russian guy, wrote a book called Ages of Discord, but he's a scientist, and his area of study is called cleology, and it's like the historical study of the historical rhythms between wealth and progress and prosperity. And he said in 2012, that we would have in 2020. So he wrote this in 2012. We would have a Donald Trump-like figure in the White House. Okay, this is before Trump was running. Okay. But he just called him out by name. He said that it would be the beginning of the most violent decade the world has seen. It would last between 5 to 15 years. And really, it would only be over when the generations wash in and then wash out. So it requires an entirely different group of people to say enough of this.
Yeah, but what were his arguments?
So it's
if he wrote the book in 1990s during the Clinton era, I would say, no wars almost, right?
Yeah. So again, he's looking at the totality of history. He's looking at the ebb and flow between the poor, the wealthy, and the middle class. And when you have an overproduction of elites and a disappearance of the middle class, that's when you have these things start, like the French Revolution and all of these sort of things. It's that tension. And he said, we are approaching that time again. The difference is it's going to be not as isolated, but it's going to be worldwide. And why? Technology, communication, the ability for us to fly all over, the ability for us to wage war, that fourth and fifth generation warfare on a global scale. So that's why, there's nowhere to run. The world is going to go through this, and boy, like right on cue, man. All of a sudden, we start having the pandemic, and all of these things happening all at this one time. I mean, it was crazy, and I always bring it up because not that many people see how much this is kind of one of those cyclical things, like the fourth turning, where they talk about every 80 years you have something major like this go on, and it's that cycle, or the Tytler cycle, of good times create weak men, or hard times create hard men create good times create weak men create hard times. It's that cycle. All of these things that people talk about in that sense all seem to be coming true.
Out of 100 people that you talk to, how many of them support Ukraine?
Okay. So in my world, and the people that I'm talking about, and in the conservative space where we're all having these conversations, again, we support the Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
We support the Russian people. We don't want war, but we don't put the Ukrainian flag in our bios and think it's a good idea that we're waging war. And we also don't think we should be spending our money over there. And I'm a non-interventionist also in the conflict in Israel as well. Okay. So I don't believe, and I'm as pro-Israel as you can get. And I have, very deep reasons and feelings about that whole thing. But we should not be sending them our billions either. There are ways that we can support them, but they are a wealthy country that has a lot of capabilities, and we should support them diplomatically on the world scale. We should get Hamas out of that area. Hamas should be defeated down to a man, but we should not be sending our billions. Ukraine, we should not be sending our billions. We created this as a war. If we didn't support them in the way that we did, I think it would have worked out entirely differently.
So if U.S. wouldn't send a single dollar, it would be ended, I want to say, in 2 months, maybe 3 months.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't think it would have been a whole massive debacle that it's been, and I think you would have had many fewer deaths, and I think you would not have the interference over there, and you would not have us getting poorer for the sake of our politicians getting wealthier.
So if you're gonna watch Lithuanian news, or if you wanna watch CNN, MSNBC, they're all saying that Ukraine is winning and they're about to win.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
No, they've already lost. But the reason that they're doing that is, again, to keep that money train going.
For as long as it's possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know a little bit about the Russian history and the Russian politics. So every time they get into the war, the first year they do very poorly.
Yes.
Every time. They almost lost the Second World War. All those wars, almost they were lost. But in the meantime, year after year, they get better and better and better. There's no chance they're going to lose this war.
No, and they just and again they have bodies to throw at these things. I mean, it's terrible to say, but they look at human life a little bit differently. Their strategy is very different than ours would be, and they are successful. They do that, and I've seen that same thing in studying them over the years as well.
And they're already taking prisoners for half a year, I want to say. Right now, the Ukrainians do the same thing. So a few days ago, I read a small article about the Ukrainians. So there is a small river on the border of Ukraine and Bulgaria, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a river. People try to cross the river just to flee from the country, and they just die over there. Only 10 men were found in May. 10 Ukrainians died there. So this is a terrible situation for the Ukrainians and for the whole humanity as well.
I could not agree more. And my assertion would be if Donald Trump was our president at that time, it would not have happened.
You see, but it feels like they're rushing. They're in a rush because they know if Donald Trump gets elected in November, it's going to stop in a few months when he's getting into the White House. So Joe Biden, France, Germany, Netherlands green-lighted that you can strike the military objects on the territory of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's escalation.
Yeah. No, we are approaching World War III, which I think that's going to be our October surprise. I think this will heat up. We'll be in a fully declared World War III, and this is why we don't need a Donald Trump. But I think that's going to actually backfire, because I think that's exactly why we need a Donald Trump.
But it doesn't make any sense. For instance, if you're a globalist and you want this war just to make a lot of money and to get the influence over the world, but if the nuclear war starts, it's like 50-50 chance that you're not going to survive. Even if you're going to survive, the plan's going to look way different than it looks right now.
Yeah, but what people don't, I think, understand is, we have that image of like the mutual assured destruction, right?
Yeah.
These massive bombs coming over and blowing up. No, we're talking about targeted nuclear weapons. We're talking about a whole different, more precise level of nuclear war that'll end up being happening.
Straight to the Kremlin, straight to the DC?
No, I mean like in the Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia,
forget
kind of stuff.
But if the World War III starts,
I think it will be smaller, and there's better people than me that write about this stuff and talk about this, that actually know what they're talking about. I just read their stuff, but I think it'll be more isolated, more targeted, smaller weapons. And you can deliver those payloads now. I mean, like the Chinese capabilities for delivering those targeted payloads, and Russia is in bed with them now. That's one of the worst things that we did in this whole entire conflict, supporting Ukraine. We drove Russia and China closer together.
And Iran
and
Saudis.
Yeah, which there's some biblical level stuff there. Some revelation concerns I have there with the fact that we got the lion and the bear together.
What are your thoughts on Russia? I mean, so only Russians acknowledge this and say this. They do videos on YouTube. They have their own opinions. They're saying like that Russians right now are selling out to China. China is buying out Russian.
Oh yeah,
they're buying their woods.
Russia is not the superpower.
Yes.
Okay. And people think that Russia is the biggest, baddest, and it's not really. Massive land mass, of course. They're not a particularly robust or wealthy economy. They haven't been for a very long time. Now they've got very wealthy people over there. The oligarchs are very, very wealthy and wield a lot of power. And, Putin is one of the wealthiest men on earth. If you were to total up his wealth, it probably rivals Elon Musk.
He's a trillionaire, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's unbelievable. It just isn't going to get reported in Forbes magazine. But you don't really understand what we've done by, again, China's influence in Russia, and that connection has grown so strong, and that's we have certain enemies in this world that are we're paying attention to some, and we're not paying attention to the ones that we should. I would say like right now we're paying attention to the communists and communist influences, right? When it should be globalists that we're looking at. We're paying attention to communist influences and all that when it should be Islam that we should be looking at. I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks, some real deep podcasts on the influence of Islam right now on a worldwide scale, of what's happening in many of these cities that were, previously Western-run cities that are really not anymore.
London.
London,
Brussels.
France.
Amsterdam.
Paris has fallen. There's all these sort of influences that are happening that are very interesting. I know you talked pretty deeply with Chad Davidson on some of that stuff too. But I'm going to be talking with the guys from the Center for Security Policy, which is a independent think tank that's been around since the 80s that have really studied what's happening behind the scenes on that, and that's dangerous, right? It's yes, the LGBTQ drag queens reading to our kids, that's a threat for sure. You've got all these threats over here that we're all looking at, but we're missing what at the in the end of days, what wars are we going to really be fighting? So that's crazy there. But it's But it's the same thing with, we're paying attention to Russia and Big Bad Putin, and we're taking our eye off China. And China is the one that's more dangerous of the two.
So if you're a regular American, just a blue collar guy, you want to just work, support your family, live a regular life, you are getting screwed. I don't want to say the word fucked, but by globalists,
there are times
communists.
There are times when that expletive is appropriate.
Agendas.
Yes.
From all sorts of amazing ideas.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, that's who I feel terrible for, right? Are the people that they're really the people that keep the gears of any country moving, right? The electricians, the plumbers, the ranchers, the farmers,
the society,
the people who, if the crap hit the fan, it's again, and I think I said this in previous episodes, it's not the tech bros that are going to save us. Right? It's not the finance guys that are going to save us. They're the ones that have fleeced us. They're the ones that have, raped and pillaged this country of all kinds of resources. It's the guys who know how to make the water flow again. It's the guys who know, how to, keep the food safe. It's the people who know how to grow things. Those are the folks that are going to be vital, and they're the ones that are getting absolutely effed. They're the ones that are being abused. They're the ones that are that don't have time for this stuff. I mean, maybe they're listening to some of these podcasts, but a lot of these guys are
driving to work.
Yeah, they're working their asses off to support their families, taking care of things, and want to have a beer and mow the lawn on the weekends. And they're the ones that are being fleeced of all of their wealth, and they're seeing their prices going up, and they're seeing their gas bills get higher, and and everything else, and then they're coming home and their kids are being told that Johnny's got two daddies, and one of them wears all right, I'm gonna stop.
Their imagination is gonna do the rest.
Yes.
I'm just super curious. What do you think of Russia? How do you think how corrupt Russia is?
Well, I mean, we know it's very corrupt. I look now. What government isn't corrupt? That's the real question. Like who is not corrupt now? There's places that had a very obvious corruption, that you just know. Putin when he put in who was it, Medved or
the one who was a president for 4 years.
And we
switched.
And we all know who was really in charge. All of that sort of stuff. When countries talk about elections and Saddam Hussein got reelected by a record 96%. They're all corrupt, and again, that was the beauty of what our founding fathers created. That worked very, very well for a time. We had the least corrupt. Again, corruption always exists. But they put some things in the way of corruption. Corruption had a headwind that made it a little bit tougher, including our kind of base moral underpinnings. We had this idea of fair play. We didn't prosecute our political rivals. We didn't use justice we didn't use the Department of Justice as a sword to go after a man. We used it as a shield to defend people.
You used to.
We used to. Yes, and now that's all over. Right, it's all over now. So
you told me that Putin is the guy that wants the Russian to remain sovereign.
Yeah.
So I heard some arguments from people that saying I don't support Zelensky, I support Putin. He's a great guy. There are people saying that a lot of Russians support Putin, etc. So people that say so, they have no idea how corrupt Russia is. So Russia is a huge territory, the biggest country in the world territory-wise.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are only two cities. If you say Russia, there is only Moscow, then St. Petersburg. That's it.
Yes.
This whole country is a mess. A lot of money, or 19% of the money are in Moscow. 8% is in St. Petersburg.
Yes.
The other 2% are spread across the whole country.
Yeah.
And it's so freaking corrupt. So he's sitting there for 25 years now. He rewrote the Constitution. he can be there till 2036, I want to say. So this man is no saint.
So I talked to Russians that love him.
Really?
Yeah.
And they live here.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think what it is people like a strong man. Like there's something about that people can be drawn to. I get it, right? Here is this fearsome leader that is proud of Russia, because I think he loves his country in that sense, right? Like when you listen to him, well, and you can correct me.
The country is his. That's the problem.
Yes, but again, that's that strong man thing, right? And so I can see how people are attracted to the strong man as an archetype, right? And because when you listen to him proudly on Tucker Carlson talk for an hour about Russian history, right? You can tell that he likes it, right? He appreciates it. He's proud of it. And yes, he does probably view himself as Russia.
Yeah.
And Russia is his. But I understand that in comparison to, and I think I think Candace Owens had a debate against Chris Cuomo, who I've got some very strong opinions about him right now. But she was saying that, look, you see this guy who is smart, right? He's intelligent.
He is.
You hear him, rattle off all of this history and talk, very clearly and very strongly on his opinions, and then you compare that to a Joe Biden who cannot string sentences together at all. And you can understand the appeal of, like, it would be nice to have somebody who was a strong man versus a weak man. Now, again, Putin is corrupt. Putin is a bad guy. You can acknowledge that he's smart without endorsing him. And Chris Cuomo, every time Candace tried to correct him on that, that's where he went, because that's what they do. If you say something that could even sound like it's positive, just simply, the guy's got a functioning brain. Oh, you're a Putin apologist. No, I'm just saying he can think.
Yeah, he can think. He's not a dummy, that's for sure. So the crazy statistics is, I want to say, I'm going to double check it when I edit the podcast. I want to say up to 60% of all the Russian population do not have a toilet inside. They go to shit outside.
Oh, wow.
That's how great Russia is. Moscow, amazing. St. Petersburg, amazing. Maybe 3 to 4 smaller cities are pretty good.
Right.
The other part of Russia is screwed.
Well, yeah, and that is, again, that's the systematic raping and pillaging by the oligarchs, and the hangover from many years as a communist country.
Yeah, so they have a saying that they were sitting on a gas needle for 20 years. Gas money, oil money. That's all they do, though. So if you take force 100 from Russia, 99 of them are going to be just oligarchs. That means they own mines, oil rigs, all those stuff. They didn't create shit.
Right.
That's where they got their money. So that's not what they did. They just took over this mines of coal and all those things.